Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Raised by Wolves, Season 1, Episode 1. It is simply titled Raised by Wolves. So we will start spoiler free because it is a first episode. It's a new show, it's a pilot, effectively. The word doesn't really apply in this case, but that's a whole conversation. This is HBO Max, new series. In fact, is this the first HBO Max series we've reviewed?
It is, yes.
I think it is, yeah. It's produced by Ridley Scott. He directs the first two episodes, and notably, Wikipedia is telling me that the third episode is directed by Luke Scott, who I checked was his son. And he's worked previously as like second unit director or something like that on like some of his movies. So
Makes sense.
he's clearly up and coming. In fact, it would shock me if Ridley took this job just so that he could give his son some
High profile work.
some work. Yeah, hey, you could do all
Yeah.
the middle episodes. Yeah, so that's good. Learn your craft. Good practice for you. But I'll be a bit facetious. This is a science fiction series, very high concept, pretty high budget. It's got it looks and kind of feels like a movie. Even the premise of this episode kind of just feels like the opening act of a movie more than it does anything else. It does kind of have like an ending because it's an episode, but if you took out the ending, it does just kind of feel like the first several beats of a movie in a lot of ways. So we didn't know what to expect from this show, or even just what to expect from a HBO Max show in general. So it's kind of fascinating, both as a show on its own, but also as an example of what might come from this service as we go forward in time.
I mean, if nothing else, it shows they're willing to throw a budget around.
Yes. Because the CG in here, which there is quite a bit of, I would say that it's not immaculate, but it's very much in the upper tier of what a TV show tends to get.
It is. I've seen better on TV.
But not a lot.
Westworld springs to mind immediately, just in the HBO family.
Yeah, but not a lot though. Not a lot that's better.
No, there's a handful of examples.
Yeah. But for the most part, it feels pretty slick, pretty high budget. It does have a very distinct visual look to it. Everything about it is going for a very specific tone and feeling. And the audio kind of enhances that. There's a lot of the sound effects of the planet they're on. Kepler 22b is the planet in question. And even the way the story starts with the two androids, mother and father, which is all they're referred to. Well, that's not entirely true. She gives like a name later on when she needs to, but but for the most part, that's just all they're referred to as mother and father. And they essentially have been sent here to raise a new colony of humans by whoever created them. But we know the name of the creator, but that's all we know, and we only know that because they name one of the kids after them.
We have a little bit of backstory as well that goes with that in terms of the factionalism, what side they come from.
Oh yeah, I was going to save that for spoilers though. There's a lot.
I'm not going to get into the details of it. I just meant in terms of that. We have a reasonable amount about where they come from.
But it's quite far into the episode before it starts bringing that up, though. The first, 20 minutes are very kind of just throwing us into this mix, and we have these two characters crash land on this planet, these two androids, and it's like, okay, what are they here for? There's a little bit of danger as they're starting to set up camp and all those things. And then, it becomes this kind of parenting kind of thing, and they're programmed to be parents, and kind of the end, and, maybe some of the different things that come up from that, where, do they have feelings? Do they not have feelings? Certainly where this episode goes imply that there's feelings that have developed that maybe even aren't understood necessarily, or are perhaps worse because it's someone who doesn't have feelings typically, is now feeling a rush of all these extreme emotions perhaps for the first time.
Sure.
I'm sure that's something we'll talk about as we get into the nitty gritty of it, but yeah, what's kind of weird about this is that this first episode very much is a prologue to what the synopsis that was going around when we were talking about this being in development, the premise of the show. This entire first episode is kind of setting up the premise of the show, because it's not until the end of the episode, because as I was watching it for the first 20 minutes I was like, okay, this is interesting, but I remember this being more about this kind of spin on this rather than this specific thing. But by the time we get to the end of the episode, we kind of see how that's created through this. So it's very much a prologue episode. That said, there's still quite a lot to spoil, because there is a lot of mythology stuff that's brought up, and how it does the stuff at the end is quite bombastic, and there's a lot of extreme things happen. So we'll talk about that in spoilers. But I guess what's left to say here. But what did you think of episode 1 of Raised by Wolves?
I thought it was 90% horrendously dull. There's 5 minutes at the end, so not quite the last 5 minutes, but give or take 5 minutes near the end that are. I think the word you just used was bombastic, and I think that's a very fair description.
Yes, this is very bombastic. Last 5-10 minutes for sure.
Yep. Before that, I didn't care about anything. It was very. You mentioned, it's got a very specific tone and like color palette that it's going for. The only word that springs to mind, especially with the color palette, is dull. It's very desaturated. Everything's kind of faded. It's just it's kind of bland. And I felt that with a lot of the actual writing.
It's going for, to tackle those points separately because they're very different things, even though they link up the way you said it there. But the planet's an interesting one, and the mood and tone that it's going for, because I was kind of appreciating how specific it was. It felt like there was a vision in mind, and maybe you don't like that vision, but there was something to do with some of the sort of the high-pitched sound effects of like the surroundings, the wind whirling, mixed with the sort of desolate location. It's kind of the opening to a sci-fi movie that I can kind of get into, and certainly early on in the episode I was kind of appreciating that there was such a distinct kind of mood that it was trying to achieve. As far as the rating the characters go, I will admit I wasn't super invested once the character stuff actually got going. Once we actually meet not Champion, because that was the first thing I thought of. Yeah, it's like it sounds like it's missing a letter, but yeah, Campion, the main child, the main baby, because we skip ahead in years, and they're a bit older, and I don't know what age they are by the time we've stopped jumping in time, but he's like
10ish maybe.
Yeah, about 10, 11, something like that. And once we get to that stuff, and it's more about kind of the how mother and father feel about the kid, and what happens because of how they feel about the situation. And because it's worth mentioning, I don't think it's a super spoiler to say, because it's kind of an early on thing, that all the other kids all die. Seemingly the atmosphere or something in this planet is not actually that friendly to human beings. Like it's not killed them all instantly, but over the 10 years of raising these kids, they've all kind of
making them ill eventually.
So very interesting
I think
mythology
you
stuff.
mentioned how it feels like the start of a movie, and it does, and that's a lot of what my problem is it feels like it should be the first 15 minutes of a movie, and instead we're spending nearly an hour, and I'm like, it feels just too dragged out for what it's doing for me.
I think I could see that. What's so funny about this is that I even sort of joked about this to myself, I don't know if that makes sense, but I was thinking about it early on in the episode where we meet these two androids and they're kind of speaking, and they've got this kind of offbeat, not humor exactly, like he like father is telling mother a joke at one point, but it kind of just feels like they've been told that jokes make them more comfortable in a tense situation, so he's trying to tell a joke, but neither one of them really gets the concept of humor all that well. And it kind of feels like this offbeat kind of thing. And it made me think of androids in the Alien franchise, which, funnily enough, Ridley Scott is the director of Alien, and later came back for Prometheus and Alien Covenant. And what's so funny about this particular show and the feel of the planet, it's not identical, but there's definitely a lot of Prometheus in this. We don't have the engineers, of course, so that element's all gone. But the androids, even to the fact that when they bleed like a white substance, like milk, which is very much like the androids in Alien. It was hard not to think about that in a, I
think it's to just on Prometheus and Alien Covenant, I think it's quite clear Ridley Scott wanted to tell a story about androids in those movies, not about aliens.
Oh yeah, that was honestly the first thing I said to someone when I was watching this, is that Ridley Scott is definitely getting his android fix in with this show. It feels like that's why he decided that he was up for doing this.
It kind of feels like, okay, he's not. You're not allowed to do. He's been told he's not allowed to do that with the Alien franchise anymore. It's got to return to its roots. We've got to do alien things. So this is what he's doing instead. This is where he's actually getting that out of his system and telling that android story that he wanted to tell so badly.
I mean, no one told him anything. They just stopped letting him make things because the last one bombed so badly. There's no alien. There's no alien. I mean, I'm sure Disney's going to reboot it at some point, but we're not there yet.
Give it 2 years.
That's right, Disney on Alien now. Wrap your heads around that, everyone.
It took me a second when you said Disney, I got a reboot. I went, oh yeah, they do. Okay, carry on. that was the thought process in my head for about a second.
Yeah, so no, it definitely feels like it came from the even though I don't think the writers get anything to do with Prometheus. I mean, I could be wrong, but the creator of the show, I don't believe has anything to do with that. He actually wrote the Denis Villeneuve movie Prisoners.
Yeah, which
the big claim
is a
to fame.
fantastic movie.
Hmm.
Very smart. And in particular, the dialogue in that movie is very strong. Which feels weird here, where I thought it was kind of weak.
It's been since I've seen Prisoners. I like the movie a lot, but I wonder if what you're saying is maybe altered a little bit the fact that there was a lot of great actors delivering the dialogue in that movie.
No, it's very possible. What I remember, again, it's been what, 5 years, however long it's been.
Oh, more than that. I was like
maybe
2013. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, 7 years, maybe 6 at a push, depending on when I saw it. But what I remember of that movie is, like I say, okay, some great actors, but it's a lot of the back and forth between them, and the tension and the smart dialogue that kind of advance things in that movie.
That's the trick here, though, is that the reason why it's maybe faltering for you a little bit is that it's not wanting to sound like, snappy back and forth or natural back and forth. It's supposed to feel like beings that aren't human trying to communicate like humans, and then a kid who's only learned from these beings. So it shouldn't sound like regular
fair,
people.
But some of the other people don't sound that great either.
What other people? Shut up. We're not spoilers yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't dislike it. When you said 90% super dull, I do think that's a bit harsh. Now, admittedly, I could easily see like getting through like 3 or 4 episodes of this and then agreeing with that. Like, once the novelty of everything's worn off a little bit. But this is the weird thing. I don't feel like the show as it actually is going to be is really started yet. This feels like it's all prologue to what the actual story is, and maybe that's why they put the first 3 episodes out in the same day, because they're going for that Hulu model of here's your 3-part pilot, essentially saying here's all the things, here's all the setup for the whole story.
Maybe. I have to say that the more we get through, of shows doing this model, the less I appreciate it. The idea that I need to watch all 3 to kind of have a grasp at the start of the show. I'm not. The more it happens, the less I think I like it. I like having a strong first episode that tells me kind of what to expect.
This is borderline hypocritical, quite frankly. Because the number of times we have talked about shows that only have 1 pilot episode and say it should be double length, and you're sitting here saying that having to watch 3 episodes on like launch day is too much, when the difference between 2 and 3 is not exactly that monumental. So
I want to clarify that pilots being double length, I still mean you present it as 1 episode that is longer. That in my head there is a clear distinction between that and 3 individual episodes, or even 2 individual episodes.
There's a distinction, but it's not really that much different. When it's something that they're both presented on the streaming service on day 1, and they're intending for you to watch both, mainly just because maybe it just feels weird if there's 1 double length episode and a batch of like otherwise evenly split.
I think that's part of a problem with streaming services that I guess I dislike, is the idea that, well, there's 3 there, so you should watch all 3, and I think that if your intention is for me to watch a certain length of an episode, that should be 1 episode, and I should have the freedom to go back or forth to the next episode as I choose.
Yeah, but I guarantee you, if you looked at the runtime of the first episode of this and it was like 3 hours long, you'd have complained.
If it was 3 hours, yeah, sure, but that's what I'm saying. If it was if it was an hour and a half, an hour, I might have grumbled. Don't get me wrong, but I'll be okay. I can appreciate a double length pilot still.
I mean, most streaming service shows tend to be a full hour, so a double length would be 2 hours. Let's not pretend.
This is 50 odd minutes once you take out the credits, so we're looking at what, about an hour 40.
Yeah, something like that.
Which I'd grumble, but I'd be like, okay, fine.
Look, I'm not saying I necessarily disagree with the sentiment of you're trying to get there, but I just don't think it's clear cut. I think there's a weird middle grey, hazy area here, because ultimately there's so many like 1 episode like premieres where I go, that felt rushed, it should have been twice as long. So I can't just also turn around and say that expecting us to like give it a 3 episode. Because let's face it, a lot of people will say that you should give most shows 3 episodes to give them a chance to try and grab you. And sometimes, honestly, yeah, that actually is kind of fair, depending on the show. There's some shows though, the first episode is just so bad that you just don't want to even give it any more chances. But it's not that unreasonable an amount to say you should probably give it this amount of a chance before you make your call.
I get where you're coming from, but for me, right now, in a world with so much choice of stuff I could watch, you've got to come out the gate swinging at this point to get my attention. You got to at least, you got to try. You can't bank on me going, well, I'll watch all 3 and then I'll see how I feel. With the amount of choice that's available to me right now, I don't think that suits the world right now for me.
It doesn't suit the world for me.
It doesn't suit where we are in the world. It doesn't suit the situation of 20 years ago when there was less choice of what to watch. There was no, all right, no Netflix. I've got, there's these things on TV at this time. I'll watch an episode, sure. It's a bit different to now where if I don't like an episode, I'll go, okay, there's probably 60 other shows on Netflix, HBO Max, Amazon. Take your pick of services combined that you've got that I could try instead.
I'm not necessarily against the 3 episodes launching in day one thing, because it's not really that much of a far cry from airing your first 2 back to back in night 1 to make it feel more like an event. It's really not. Why 3? I guess they just figure 3's the magic number. It's the magic number to.
I wonder if there's anything in that with like a sunk cost fallacy. The idea of if you've watched 3, you're more likely to continue because I've already watched this much of it.
Possibly. I would be more inclined to say that the reason why it's 3 is because of some sort of analytical data to back up of how many people usually try before they like where the drop off is. So the idea of like, okay, we'll give them the 3 right away and then they're kind of hooked. So then they.
I suspect there's some data that says people who watch 2, 60% continued, but people who watch 3, 80% continued to the end.
Something like that.
And I'm agreeing with that logic. There's probably some analytical data that supports it. I would say I wonder if it is a sunk cost fallacy on the human end rather than the analytical end, where in a 10-episode show like this, if I've watched 3 episodes, it's like, well, I'm a third through already. I don't know. I wonder if there is something like that.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely interested in that part of it.
Not me. I've literally stopped watching a season, the 1 episode before the finale before.
That's unusual, though, you have to admit. Most people would just stick it out and finish it at that point.
That stream TV show was that bad that I didn't care. I was willing to walk away.
I like how you just have to call out the show as well.
I was willing to walk away at that point.
Pretty sure that's not the only show you've done that with either, because I'm sure you mentioned it was something on the last episode of the news.
Maybe, I don't know. It's not happened a lot. I mean, it's not something to make a habit of. Is getting to the almost the ending.
What was the show that they got cancelled recently? It was a new season of something that had returned. It was like a spin-off sequel sort of show.
Penny Dreadful.
That was it. I'm sure you said in that you got like 1 episode from the end of the season and then stopped.
Yeah, there was I think it was like a lot of TV shows started that week, so once there was other stuff to watch, it was like, oh, bye-bye. It was like getting watched because it was the summer and there was nothing else on. And then as soon as there was something else, it was like, okay, now I'm done.
Would you agree that you are fairly unusual in this regard, that most people who watch 9 out of a 10-episode season will just, out of habit, watch the 10th episode?
Don't be ridiculous. I am not the unusual one. Everyone else is the unusual ones.
I'm not... okay, unusual in this particular scenario does not actually mean wrong. I think you might actually be in the right. You might have the correct mindset here to make that decision, but it's also unusual. Both of those things can be true.
Just say that part about me being right again.
Yeah, I know. I said you may be correct. I didn't say you are. I said may. Just before your head explodes, let's bring it down a notch.
No. I heard what I heard. But regardless,
you hear all sorts of things out of my mouth.
Yeah, back to the show at hand, though.
Yes.
I do think it's very stylish. I do kind of appreciate the tone it's going for. I like the feel of the planet. I like the feel for the most part of the tech. All those kind of like details like that. But admittedly, and I do love stories about robots and androids and cyborgs, and I like stories about discovering humanity, and in this case, maybe kind of a darker side to, I feel like so many stories about machines building humanity tends to be either heartwarming, even in something like Terminator, like Terminator 2 specifically. Ultimately, the story of the machine learning some humanity is heartwarming. Yes, before that, there are these faceless killing monsters that, well, not faceless, they have a face, but
that's the point. Well, most of the time they have a face, not always.
Yeah, but the idea being that ultimately it's a very heartwarming thing. This seems to be going down another path where no, this is a machine getting human feelings, and how much of a disaster that's going to be because they're stronger than us and they can't keep them in check.
Yeah. And there are things in this I feel like I should like, that ideas that should appeal to me, to do with the religious factionalism, but I think it goes a bit over the head, beats you over the head with some of it. I mean, even the title "Raised by Wolves," it's very clearly evoking Rome, right? The founding of Rome, Romulus and Remus, who were raised by wolves. That's the myth. And obviously, Rome is the center of Christianity at this point.
Obviously. Yeah, I got that.
I'm pretty sure that is a very clear intention. It's not my fault you don't know the story.
I have literally never heard of any of this ever.
It's very well known mythology. This is not unusual.
She held at one point in the episode. Went, oh, there's your wolf connection. There you go.
Jesus Christ. No, I'm like 90% sure that's where this is coming from.
Oh, it probably is. It probably is. I assumed that a lot of the religious side of this that they kind of bring up was, because when we see, I mean, I don't want to get into, we're not spoilers yet, but when we see certain characters and what they're wearing, it looks very Crusader-y.
There's a lot of Christian iconography.
Yeah.
Not straight lifted from, present modern day Christianity as things you would recognize, but very similar symbolism.
Yeah, it's like a made up, branch
variant.
Yeah.
I
mean, I don't know if it. I mean, I assume it's a branch of Christianity, but they don't ever actually see it.
Yeah, I would say it's a pre-Constantinople version that kind of was the branch from there. Is kind of what it seems like to me, which means absolutely nothing to Pete, I'm sure.
No, I don't understand any of that sense, but. It's a very interesting visual to drop in your otherwise very sort of gritty, sciencey looking science fiction story.
It is, and it's the something that should interest me, but it feels a bit too in my face, a bit too contrasted.
It's interesting because when that element sort of showed up, I thought, "Oh, Car's going to love this. He's going to be raving about this part."
Yeah, like I say, that's my sort of stuff. I should be like so into that sort of thing.
Yeah, all right. Well, I think we'll get into the spoilers then, so we can talk about some of the story details and the meat. So yes, full spoilers for Raised by Wolves episode 1 at this point. Yeah. So they have the kids who are kind of like, because we kind of see Mother essentially naked, but she doesn't have like all the features, right? She's kind of like
a Barbie doll.
Yeah, kind of a Barbie doll-esque, but the idea being that I think the embryos are all inside her, so they hook up these like little tubes and sort of grow them in like, not exactly test tubes, but essentially, when you say
little
test tube
tanks,
baby, yeah, that's just kind of what you mean. And the sort of the little moment where what turns out to be Campion, like, seems to be dead, isn't breathing as a baby, and the father's like, well, the protocols say we should break him down and feed him to the others, which is a really dark, which again goes out the wolves thing a little bit.
It is, and there's the okay, well, we can't waste the nutritional value, is I guess the point here.
Yeah, but she caresses him a little bit, holds him close, and then ultimately he starts crying, and it kind of implies that there's more to this than just the raw science. There's some actual emotion and feeling to it.
There was a couple of points that had me thinking at this point, because at this point his father keeps saying, our programming is this, as if she doesn't know, as if it's not affecting her, as if it's programming, it shouldn't be a choice. He's reminding her like, hey, don't forget the programming. It's kind of the prodding, and she just does her own thing, and then later in the episode she does basically the same thing to him, and it's like, okay, so I guess she is under the program as well. It's a little bit murky on that.
I think it's just any like ideas you have of how this works from any other robot fiction, you should just throw out the window and let them kind of give us what their version of this is, and how they kind of like process what
that's fair.
their commands are and whatnot. But the kids, there's one kid that falls in the big hole early on. We skip later, some more have died. The last remaining one outside of Campion is getting sick and dies. And essentially it becomes this debate where Mother is determined to stay here no matter what, but Father's starting to think, look, Campion Ken needs to find other humans. Like, we're never going to be able to survive here. It's clearly not habitable.
Their mission was obviously to create some sort of population, because presumably these children were not actually biologically related in any way.
No.
And the idea was they would be the start of a civilization on this planet.
Yeah,
but obviously you can't do that with just one of them.
Yeah, and the backstory of this, I almost got worried at one point when she's explaining some of the backstory of the war to the kid. Because as an atheist specifically, there was a point during the middle of this, I was like, is this going to have some sort of weird anti-atheist like bent on everything, the way it's sounding? Because they were sent here by an atheist, right? Basically to start a new civilization that was not founded on religion, because the war with the religious group has went horribly and everyone's been dying and it's horrible. And because the robot's so like hardcore atheist and saying, no, we're atheists and we do this and we do that, we do not believe in anything, to the point where the kid's trying to like deal with the fact that all of his siblings have slowly died over the past several years.
And the kid's like, I mean, what's the harm in praying? Can't do any harm. And the mother's like, no, you pray, you give up on your science. It's possible to be scientific and pray.
It's so weird to me because like it feels like a weird thing as someone who is an atheist and has always pretty much been an atheist and interacts with lots of other atheists. There's very little of like a mandate where it's like, now how dare you not you stop praying right now, how dare you.
It is weird. It is one of the general defining traits of most atheists is that they don't insist on this, right?
No. Have opinions on it, sure, but don't
opinions. But there's generally speaking a lack of insistence because it's a lack of caring in the same way that people with faith care about it, right?
I mean, what's so funny about it is so many like stories and even just things in real life come from the idea of someone imposing their religious views on someone else, and it becomes this kind of
basically every war up until the 1600s.
Yeah, pretty much. So I get the irony of flipping it here a little bit and saying, no, this is like an atheist trying to, and admittedly it's in the context of, no, the religions have caused all these wars and for whatever reason. But I was like, oh, what are they doing with this? And as it kind of kept going, it was kind of, I was like, okay, I get what you're saying. Is the idea if you force anything, even atheism, on someone, it's kind of a problem. Like someone has to sort of like find their coping mechanisms and do all this naturally. Like, so I get what it's sort of ultimately trying to do and what I assume it's going to be doing throughout the whole show. But there was kind of like a weird moment where I was like, this feels odd to like it's going to be very like, I don't know, biased in a way that I've never seen something be biased before. And it was odd, but I definitely think it's trying to make more of a nuanced point than it is just someone. I don't for a second think that Ridley Scott and a writer sat down and goes, okay, we're ultra religious, so we want to make an atheist bashing story.
I agree. It's trying to make more of a nuanced point. I'm not sure how nuanced it actually is.
Oh, sure. How effective it is another question, but I don't. I'm talking about intent here, rather than...
Intent. Yeah, I'll agree. Yeah.
But ultimately, Mother kills Father. Father tries to like contact because he sees a ship passing by in the sky, and it's like, hey, the religious colonies
Ark.
of the Ark, the Ark is what they call it, is overhead, and he wants to contact it, and then this fight erupts between them. Well, I mean, a fight is maybe a bit of a weird thing. It's more that she starts trying to just stop him from moving, and ultimately she goes out of her way to kill him, and then lies about it to Campion. But by this point, Campion wants to contact the ship as well, so he actually tries to. He sort of descends because the ship, went down this big crevice essentially, and he goes down with the rope because Fowler was trying to do that earlier on, and managed to get out a signal. And we have these figures show up again in the sort of crusade-looking sort of robes and outfits.
Yeah, with the symbol on them is very Eucharistic,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
And it was kind of a weird visual. I'm like, oh, this is such a strange show. Like, I was kind of like, this is weird, like what they're doing here. Right away though, the guy with the beard's very, Marcus, I think his name is. He's very intimidating. You don't really trust him right away. And it's like, as much as I don't really trust her either. Like, Mother's clearly like very possessive and went into like super controlling mother. Like, nothing must come between me and my child kind of mentality. But at the same time, I don't really trust him either. Like, there's almost no. I guess you're supposed to be rooting for the kid. You're supposed to be rooting for Campion, but and he's fine. Like, I don't dislike him.
He doesn't have a great amount of personality.
It may just be that the character's just too young. They may have should have went a bit older with this.
Yeah, I mean, because the only things I could really tell you about his character are that he kind of wants to be religious, but doesn't really know anything about the religion. Just understands the vague concept. Well,
actually, what I think's more interesting about it is I don't think it's even necessarily he wants to be religious. It's just that the world is slowly killing everyone he knows. All of his siblings, who he's barely able to even remember what they look like. All this stuff is happening to him, and there's like nothing to give him hope. So it's just that he needs something to hope for, and the idea of a faith of some kind is the only thing that he can turn to. I don't think it's that he believes in anything specific, or he wants to believe in,
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
It is more just, I think part of it's that. Part of it might even just be, natural rebellion against parents.
Yeah, sure. The idea that they're saying you're going to be this one thing, so the last thing he wants to be is this one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. And they've got an android with them, and that android seems to think, this android, because she's trying to pretend she's not. She's trying to pretend that she has a human, but they know.
And they all know immediately.
Yeah. But when the other android tries to fight her, when they try to basically kidnap the kid, now admittedly, it seems like they want the kid to just join their ranks.
Well, yeah, this was the bit where I kind of checked out, if I'm honest.
Okay.
Where the kid's going to be a prophet. There's a prophecy about this kid on this planet. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, once they got to the prophet stuff, it's like he might be a chosen one. He might be the prophet raised by an android on this planet. Blah blah. Yeah, I wasn't into that conversation either. Mother going nuts though, whipping out some more powers, because it's revealed earlier on that she can mimic voices, kind of like the Terminator, but she can also do like a
face shift.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way she implied it was more of like sort of like a visual kind of like disguise hologram kind of thing, rather than she's like morphing her body. It's more like a display on top of her.
Could be, yeah.
And so we see that earlier on, but then we find out here she's got kind of like, imagine like a canary cry, like Black Canary, but the sound wave like instantly just makes the faces of the people it hits just sort of like burst into like burns and boils.
Kind of melts.
Yeah. I mean, and that effect was fun. Like, once this started happening, it was like, okay, what's up?
This is where it got bombastic, right?
Yeah. Well, she catches the Marcus, who's still alive at the end of the episode. In fact, he's the only one who's still alive at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
She gets his little ship, goes up to the mothership, the Ark, just pretends to be him so they'll give her access, but as soon as she gets on, she basically just walks around the ship, exploding people with her vocal wave
Pulse,
thing.
Yeah,
and it's just blood splatter just happening, and it's just this Terminator-esque moment of her going through the ship doing this. Honestly, the worst thing she does though is rip off a dude's eyelid. That made me
Do you know what? It surprised me as well, because it's like, we need a retinal scan. I was like, all right, well, she can just face shift, right?
Yeah, but does she create the eye to the level at which a scanner would be filled?
I don't know. I would have assumed so, but maybe not, and that is a fair thing. But then she just rips the eyelid off and goes, "Well, you can't close your eye." So,
because I would certainly not assume, like, let's say it was a fingerprint thing. I would not assume. Now, admittedly, that may take physical pressure, which maybe she can't do with the projection, if you will. But I would assume that the fingerprint wouldn't match, because it's not like she's recreating that sort of detail.
I mean, she does something with the ship, though, right, to get up there, because it's not responding to Marcus. Did you say his name was? It's locked him out. It's like no, things are failing. And she gets in there and pretends to be him, and it all just works for her.
Maybe that was voice recognition more than anything else. That one.
I mean, maybe.
Well, because the thing she's trying to do up in the mothership is like initiates like a self-destruct. Oh, not self-destruct. It was crash into the
planet. Yeah.
But I mean, I like to think that the security for that's quite high compared to just.
It's very true. Yeah.
But she goes to the sort of nursery. They've literally got a holodeck from Next Generation. The kids are all playing like a snowy like setting in the holodeck. And she comes and gets all the kids. And this is the premise of the show, as I remember, is that this robot mother is taking care of a group of children. And it's like, oh, can she be trusted? And there's the one kid who kind of knows what she's really like, and that's Campion, obviously. So it was all build up to setting up what the premise of the show and the description always was, and all the pre-release stuff. But Marcus is still alive though. Marcus is like stranded on the planet.
Well, we gotta have a crusader to fight.
Well, he has to be an antagonist. Yeah, we have to have someone there. To deal with it. I assume though that the ship crashing and going missing is going to maybe eventually lead to others looking for it. You would think,
quite possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, on the symbolism and stuff that I wasn't feeling.
Yeah.
Every time she flies, she does a big Jesus pose.
Oh, we haven't even got to that yet. She's got a dream sequence like in the middle when she's asleep. And it was kind of like, I wasn't sure if this was supposed to be some kind of weird flashback where it seems to be like Earth or wherever, this city is being decimated, and she's like sort of all golden looking, and she's like floating through it's kind of very Metropolis-esque. And with Metropolis, I mean the 20s German film, not Superman, say. And she's kind of floating through the skyline as everything's blowing up, and she's just kind of like, basically, seeming like the cause of this, like she's the Antichrist. Almost. And
I would say it's probably not a flashback, because the impression that I got was that they weren't even like turned on as androids until they woke up on the ship.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. That's what it said like at the start. Yeah.
So I think more an actual dream of what she wants.
Once, I don't know about once, but it's definitely, I'd say it's more of a prosthetic vision of what she can actually be, because obviously we see her actually turn gold and float that way later on in the episode, and I wonder if it's the idea that she's the as much as the kid might be a prophet and be a good thing for society, she may actually be the harbinger of doom and the thing that's eventually going to kill everyone or something like that. I don't know.
Could be, yeah.
It was essentially once we got to that later on, because it didn't seem like this was something that she knew she could do, and the dream kind of made her go, "This is that was a weird dream." But then later on,
there's a few things in that where she doesn't know she can do things until she tries it.
Yeah,
like the face shift thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel that's more of a not necessarily a literal prophecy. I don't necessarily think we're going to have this moment of her over a city. I mean, maybe they will. Maybe they'll get back to a planet at some point, and she will end up causing chaos. But more just kind of an omen for what she is and things to come would be my guess. Like, I don't know. Did the creator intend this? Like, whoever built her, did he intend for this thing to happen? Is this something he put in her, or is it more than that?
I mean, my assumption would be yes. I don't think she's evolving that fast, so to speak. So my assumption is that these features were put into her, just she wasn't told about them. Like she wasn't told about the face shift. She just found out she could do it.
The features, and I wasn't talking about the features. I was talking about this seeming like desire to end the human race.
I would say probably intentional, yes. Based on the other things, it feels like it's probably not specifically an anti-human race thing, but it's more end the religious society is probably what the desire was, and this is that personified essentially.
Yeah, very very possibly that. That's was definitely a weird one coming into, because I not only just because it was a new show and a new service that we didn't really have much, just because Ridley Scott's so up and down in quality. Like, there was so much, and then the trailer was kind of weird. And having seen episode 1 now, it is indeed a bit weird.
That's a fair descriptor, yeah.
It's a bit weird. It is a bit dull in places. I don't know if I'd say 90% dull. That felt at least a bit harsh for this first episode. Admittedly, though, like if it keeps a similar kind of pacing, perhaps, throughout, But again, we have all these other characters who all these other kids who I assume are going to be main features in terms of characters to play with. Maybe not all of them because there's a whole bunch of them, but
presumably, I think there's probably like 7 or 8. Probably as many as died.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It does not sound like you want to watch any more of this.
No, I don't think I do. I think it's a bit dull. I don't think I want to put myself through a whole other hour of it, if I'm being perfectly honest.
I mean, I don't feel as harsh as that, but I mean, if you're not wanting to do it, then I suppose that just means it's not happening. But
I mean, you could do it. Nothing's stopping you.
Yeah, the problem is though is that when I take on things on my own, we don't cut back our schedule to accommodate said things. So,
no, but we don't have to replace with anything anyway. We had this scheduled anyway. Kind of.
So yes, I won't ask people if they want me to do another one because they're all going to say yes because they always just say yes to more things.
They do, but honestly, we've got so much this week already that I'm much more excited to try or actually watch.
Yeah, so that's actually quite a busy week because we have season 2 of The Boys kicking off tomorrow, as well as another new show from Netflix called Away, about Hilary Swank going to Mars. So,
which I do think looks pretty good from the trailer. Again, could prove me wrong, but I was more into the trailer for that than I ever was the trailer for this.
That's fair. I mean, I'm not necessarily against watching more of it, but I'm also not that disappointed by not watching more either, which maybe gives you a sense of my kind of middling feeling on it overall. But I don't hate that I watched the first episode though. It was interesting enough to sort of check out and sort of get a sense of what it was and whatever.
It left me just wanting more, but not in the way I want more of what it is. I wanted more out of. I like the ideas of it. It's kind of what I like. I don't necessarily like the execution. I wanted more out of the execution. I think the way I'd phrase that.
Yeah, but I will say this: it did feel very different to a mediocre episode 1 of, say, like a Netflix show that we don't like that much of. It makes me interested to see when HBO Max do hit like a winner, as it were, what that's going to feel like and what the overall quality is going to be like then. So
yeah, this isn't something that has me worried about HBO Max, because obviously there's sometimes you watch the first thing you watch from a service. I mean, ultimately I think a lot of services grow into what they are anyway. We've seen that a few times now between Netflix, Amazon, and even Hulu, I would say. Whereas, so this is okay. It's early efforts. They're finding their feet. They're trying to figure out what they want to be as a service. We probably expected more from them coming from the HBO side of things, right? We thought, they've got a head start in direction.
That's actually a good point. That in terms of like what this feels like, does it feel like a HBO or HBO adjacent show? And I would say no, but it also doesn't feel like anything else either. It doesn't feel like it's a network show by any stretch.
There's no way you'd have this pacing on HBO.
No.
Like on HBO proper, if this was airing weekly, I don't think it feels like this in any way. No, I mean, the closest it definitely feels like it belongs in the streaming categories. I'm not sure it feels like totally unique. But it doesn't have me worried about the future of HBO Max either. I'm like, okay, I'm still open to checking out other things from them for sure.
Yeah, no reason why not. And they've got a lot of interesting things in the works, so no reason to be dissuaded from it. And maybe there'll be like a bunch of mediocre or stinkers before we get to the good stuff, but that's okay.
It's possible. If anything, it has me optimistic about the future of HBO Max, because even if I didn't like this particular thing, it definitely has a strong direction of its own and style. Well, I didn't necessarily like those, but it has them. And that's objectively a good thing. It's not watered down for the masses. They're throwing budget around, so these things put together. Eventually, there's bound to be something with budget and a style and direction that appeals to me.
Yeah. So there you go. That's Raised by Wolves, episode 1. Do let us know what you think of the episode in the comments below if you've watched it, and if you have watched more episodes, because the first 3 are out on day 1 here. Do let us know what you think. You can, of course, like and subscribe and all that stuff. Liking is super important and helps us find more audience members and keeps the channel growing, so please do. It is an easy and free way to support us. You can also, of course, support us financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble. Catch us on Twitter at mail_fuzz for channel updates. But otherwise, that is it. So thank you once again for watching and listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?